Hi, I'm Valerie, and this is my reading wrap-up for June of 2020. And this should be fairly short because I read two books. The first book I read was The Indifferent Stars Above, the Harrowing Saga of a Donner Party Bride by Daniel James Brown. Now, this is a nonfiction book. Obviously, it's about the Donner Party in the year 1846 and their misadventure trying to reach California. So, COVID-19 and the lockdown has a way of putting life in perspective, and this book, I think, helped put COVID-19 in perspective. Though certainly it's been an unprecedented time. That's a phrase that you hear all the time. Unprecedented time. Even though we are supposed to be confined to our homes primarily, though where I am in the month of June, we did see some loosening to restrictions. I primarily am continuing to stay home, but at least there aren't snowdrifts up to our chests. At least we're not eating each other. At least we don't have snow blindness. At least we aren't swimming in bed bugs and lice and filth. And at least we don't have hypothermia. And at least we're not killing native men who were trying to help us lead our way out. This was a really interesting tale, punctuated with details and context for the time. Things like the reproductive and prophylactic tactics and practices of the time. The role of women, what else was happening in the world of 1846 outside the Sierra Nevadas. I really appreciated sort of the context that came with this historical accounting. And I found there were a lot of details, even though this is a story I'm somewhat familiar with, that I hadn't previously heard. The author, Daniel James Brown, is a descendant of Sarah Greaves, who's one of the people who survived the tale. She is the Donner Party bride. She was a newlywed. It's very poignant as, spoiler, she loses her husband and much of her family. So that was particularly poignant, kind of the context of that from an individual perspective and the perspective of a young woman. There were details that I wasn't familiar with before, like how they ended up sort of diverging from the known path to California was the result of really some nefarious characters who, one in particular wrote a book in order to get people to sort of lure them or encourage them in his interests to come to California because they were trying to get enough immigrants to fight the Mexicans for California. And in fact, took extra steps when they saw that some immigrants were going to Oregon instead. So that was really like so self-centered. Also sort of exploring the concept of manifest destiny associated with that. So this was a really well-researched and interesting tale. It sort of made the history come alive with the individual stories. There was sort of some supposition, obviously, individual conversations, what people were feeling individually can be supposed, but there's limited sort of diaries and firsthand context for that. So, but the combination I think really worked. I found it to be a really solid book. It might be better for someone to read, say, post-apocalypse if you're looking for some lighter material during this time. But if you are a history buff, I'd add it to your want-to-read list. The second book was one, I listened to the first book. I would say I wasn't 100% excited about the narrator, the voiceover artist who read the book. I didn't love his voice a lot. He was fairly dry. The second book I also listened to was called Britt-Marie Was Here by Fredrick Backman. And I've read some of Fredrick Backman's other books, and he sort of specializes, I think, in offbeat characters. I'm given to understand that this book gives prominence to a character who's seen in another one of his books, which I haven't read yet, but I may make my way back around to it. So, but Fredrick Backman does like sort of these offbeat characters that, you know, helps you explore why people who might seem initially not that interesting or even off-putting, kind of their thought process and how they end up how they are. So Britt-Marie is a woman who I believe is 63. She loves bicarbonate of soda, baking soda, as a cleaning element, and she loves her balcony. And she doesn't so much love cleaning obsessively, but more or less does it when she doesn't know what else to do. It seems like she spent a lot of her life waiting for her husband, waiting for what's going to happen next, without a lot of ownership, I guess, of those events. She's deeply afraid of dying alone, and then no one finding the body until the neighbors notice the stink. She feels pretty unseen in her life and unappreciated and to some degree misunderstood, because she kind of insists throughout that she's not one to judge when clearly she was. She finally leaves her husband of 40 years and comes to find a job and a place in the economically depressed town of Borg. Among the few inhabitants still left there, including a pizza shop owner, a visually impaired former soccer star, and a down-on-its-luck kids' soccer league. And she sort of muddles her way through her hang-ups and her longing for home to find some form of connection and certainty that she was here, referencing Britt-Marie Was Here, the title. There were some sections I found to be somewhat maudlin. I don't necessarily love the redemption trope or, you know, the you know, oh, kids, you know, gotta help the kids kind of thing. I did appreciate that the author allowed the husband, who she has left, to be not entirely a flat and one-dimensional character. You do see some other sides to him going through the story. And I like the way that the story ended. I think I've said, if you've watched any of my other videos, I'm not super into like love stories and love saves the day sort of things. I like, and again, spoiler, I won't give it all away, but I like that she did not choose for certain any one door, but sort of heads off onto a new path. So I thought that was a solid book too. I'd say for both of them, the Indifferent Stars Above and Britt-Marie Was Here, I'd both give them kind of 3.5 range. They were decent. I don't think I would reread either one of them, but they were all right. And I will mention that I had started Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo. It's the second book in her Crishaverse series, and I was reading that on my Kindle. But I think I'm officially abandoning it. I've kind of struggled over the past couple weeks to get into it. It's got a bunch of stupid love stuff, which can ruin a story for me. And sort of my deal with myself is that I don't have to finish reading anything I'm not feeling, and I'm not feeling that one. So that's it for the month of June. I'm hoping to read more in July. I think listening seems to be a better tactic for me right now. I can do it while I'm running or walking or doing the dishes or whatever it is, and that just seems to fit my attention span at the moment. So I'd love to hear in the comments what you're reading. If you liked this, give it a like. If you think someone else could use it, feel free to share it. And if you haven't already, subscribe so you never miss a video. Thanks.